Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you very much for joining me, Ritika. Today, we're going to be talking about the CMDB NLQ search and query capabilities of the CMDB. I'm Mark Bodman here, Senior Product Manager for the CMDB, CSDM, and Service Graph Connectors. And Ritika, what do you do here?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me here. Excited to be here talking about CMDB and NLQ search. So I'm a part of the CMDB product management team, and I've been leading the NLQ search product lately. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and to talk about it.
This is awesome. And I look at this query capability as one of the cornerstones of people getting value out of the data that we're managing. It's one of our core pillars, right? We ingest information, we provide insight, and we help govern that data. So it's a key part of our strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with this, we're hoping that customers can start looking at their CMDB data without knowing every nook and cranny detail about the schema.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that with this tool, you can get started with the journey of searching the CMDB without having a complete understanding of the schema in its entirety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd like to turn it over to you and maybe show folks how to do that query. And I want to start the questions here. I'm going to stop sharing and go over to you there, Ritika. Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to start with, just some basics because people may not even know how to get to this query. And a lot of folks are using the platform and they might confuse the platform search with the CMDB search capabilities. So do you want to explain that a little bit? Because, you got that search right there in the upper right, but that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
No, we are not. So you're absolutely right. We have this notion of what we call the global search in every instance, ServiceNow instance. So the idea is that you put your search query here and it sort of indexes some of the tables within the instance and then tries to give you search results based on whatever is indexed. CMDB data is really big on a lot of instances. So this global search doesn't work with CMDB. So the way you go about searching the CMDB is that you have to go to this workspace, which is dedicated to CMDB, which is the CMDB workspace. And once you open that, then you have this widget available to you. And you can start your CMDB search journey using this widget right from within CMDB workspace.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think we came out with this back in our Tokyo release, if I'm not mistaken, but it is distributed and updated in the workspaces, which is in the store. So you can go to the store every quarter. There might be an update. So please check the store for the latest and greatest, even no matter what release you're on right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we started off with Tokyo, and then with every store release, we've been making like enhancements to this as we are embarking on this journey of making this tool more robust, more rich. So absolutely, like quarter after quarter, I'd encourage people to go and take a look at what's new in Workspace and also in NLQ.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And before we jump in and try some of these out, I guess one of the things that's quite interesting for me anyway, is that this is built on top of the CMDB query builder, which is kind of a core feature here that this is making easier to use. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So CMDB query builder was a tool which was built to make it easy to create really complex queries, which join 2, 3, 4 tables and set up like complex filters on that tables. But it is a user still has to go and create that entire structure themselves using that tool.
Okay.
So the idea was to leverage that functionality, but then give users a way to just create that query sort of automatically by using their natural language.
Excellent. Well, cool. So we're here. Let's explore a few queries. Can you provide some? And we'll start out with some simple stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with some very basic queries on simple tables, and then from there we'll start getting into some more complex queries. So we'll start with a simple example first. So let's say I want to look at all the servers where the location is Seattle.
Okay.
Right?
Well, we're in Seattle today, so why not? Yes. All the servers here.
Located in Seattle.
All right.
So I'll just enter that query and I'll search for it. And here we have this step where essentially it maps the tables in your utterance to a list of choices that are possible for that utterance. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward. I said servers, I am looking for servers. So I'll go ahead and I'll press the view search results, and you'll see that it was able to set up the filter correctly on the server table, and it's showing me all the servers which are located in Seattle.
Okay. So if it was a little bit ambiguous, or maybe you were looking for virtual machines versus maybe, physical machines, you'd have to, put in some additional criteria there.
That's correct. Or sometimes table names can be ambiguous. So using that drop down, you can actually see it'll present you with the option, and you can change your selection.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So let's try another one.
Okay. So now let's say, take another very simple example. I want to see all the application servers that are running in my system. So I'm going to do, again, a simple query, show me all application servers.
Yeah.
So you'll see when it resolved to application server. And here you can see that application and server map to some other tables as well. So if somebody was looking for a different table, like they meant just application or server, it's coming up with those options, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, I am actually interested in the app server table.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and okay.
Yeah. So you do still need to understand a little bit about the structure of the data, but it's easier to get to it, right? It's easier to structure the query and get started.
It is, and it is also a tool to familiarize yourself with the schema. Like you might not be familiar with every table, but
yeah,
this could be a good way of even learning a little bit more about,
absolutely. Because I mean, we have over 800 CI types in our class. So yeah, it could be a little bit daunting knowing where to go and how to get there, but this makes it easier to find those. Yeah.
So yeah, these were some of the simple queries, right?
Yeah.
But it is totally possible that you within your organization have certain tables which are referred to differently by different people, right? So for instance, I might want to say, oh, I don't want to do app servers. I want application servers. I will call them app servers.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And now you can see it was unable to identify that app servers. By that, I meant application servers, right? So there is a tool at your disposal, which is called configuring the NLQ synonyms. So what I can do is like, I can go to the synonym table here, and any such taxonomy that I have specific to a particular table or a particular attribute within a table, I can actually configure that here.
Okay. And there's a bunch that we can figure out of the box just for common things.
We do, yeah. Some of the common utterances, for example, a virtual machine instance could be called just as a VM or a VM.
Just a VM, yeah. Yes, that's.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And you can add more based on your language that you use locally. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's say in this case, I'm trying to do it for an application server. I'm saying, oh, app servers. Server, right?
Yeah, plural or singular. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm gonna commit. And now the moment of truth. Let's see if that works. Try to show me service. So now you see it was able to resolve that to the application server.
Got it. So you don't have to reboot it or anything, or it just works. Yeah.
So there's that.
Excellent. Cool. So what happened? How do we, look at a couple more complicated things, such as multiple tables that are kind of joined together, like business apps on app services or app services to hardware?
Yeah, absolutely. So these were some of the simple queries, right? But
yeah.
Within our CMDB, we know that, tables are related to other tables, and oftentimes you want to get your data based on how those relationships are set up.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, I'm interested in knowing like which Windows servers are associated with any application service,
Okay.
right? So I go ahead and answer, okay, show me application services with Windows servers, right? So I'm gonna go ahead. So here again, it shows me which tables were resolved. It resolved Windows servers to Windows server, application service to application server.
Okay.
That's good.
And you don't have to specify the relationship type or anything. It'll automatically figure that out for you.
Yes.
All right.
So there it is. So this is the list of all the application services which contain a Windows server.
Yep.
And it's showing me which service, which Windows server, so on and so forth. And
yeah,
we see a part of the result here because it like limits to how much data it shows you.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you can like go ahead and load all the results, load them page by page, batch by batch.
Is there a limit to the number of results we can process here? Because I know some CMDBs can be very, very large, millions of records maybe. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we do have some limits that we ship with out of box in the query builder.
Mm-hmm.
So the same limits apply here as well.
Okay.
So for instance, I think the out of box limit for any query builder result is 10,000, I believe.
Okay.
But that's configurable, so you can override that.
Yeah, so they can look up that limit and then add more. Of course, performance will be degraded with that much more data coming in, but yeah, you got to watch out for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you got some interesting new options on the top too.
So like we had discussed earlier, right, this is built on top of query builder.
Yeah.
So if somebody is interested in knowing like how that query was built within the query builder, maybe they just want to learn and familiarize themselves with query builder itself, right?
Got it.
So this is where it opens up the query, how it got built in query builder. You can look at the classes, you can look at like what kind of filters were set. So like in this particular case, we have this notion of what we call as like the pattern query that's associated with application services.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at how that pattern query got created. So all of those are like things which you can see within the query builder, which are hidden when you just look at the results NLQ search results.
Yeah, and explain pattern query, because I think that's a very powerful feature for app services, because one of the things we talk about in CSDM, right, is, at that crawl stage, connecting your business apps to app services down to all these CIs and understanding that app service, which is more logical in construct, and it's connected to many underlying CIs at various levels. As a matter of fact, you may have network devices and app services, load balancers, and hardware down in software eventually. So what is that, the neat thing about that pattern, how does that change the way that query behaves?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, right, application service is a logical construct, but more often than not, you're interested in understanding what is going under the covers within an application service, right? So it's not the details of the application service CI itself, but you want to know what is contained within the application services, what types of CIs, how are they related to each other?
Yeah.
So when you leverage this feature, essentially it lets you get into the details of that application service. So it's going to say, okay, show me all application services which contain Windows servers, which I'm responsible for.
Okay.
Or which have Windows servers running database applications. So those kind of details, those kind of queries you can do for any application service by using this particular pattern feature.
Okay. So it's not going to look at the relations from the app service itself, but what's in it. Yes, got it. And that's pretty powerful. I think I really like that when we added that. Yeah, I noticed that on the right-hand side, people may not know that they can add their own columns to this as well, right? So if you need more than just the basic name and related items, you can have columns, you can add columns and get more details out, or add your filter criteria here.
That's absolutely right. So by default, when you look at the results that get generated, it picks up the basic columns for any table, mostly the name and the relationship and all those things. But if there are additional columns for a particular table that you're interested in, so for example, for application service, I might be interested in knowing who owns that application service, right?
Yeah,
So I can include those columns here so that when I look at the results of this particular query, I have that information available to me in that result table.
very cool. And I know you can save these queries once you're in this area, in the query builder here itself, and then or write reports. We won't get into all that today, but this is kind of covering anything that you need to do from a query builder point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can save them, you can generate reports out of these, you can actually have schedules attached to these queries, and those schedules can be recurring that, okay, I have this query run once a week or whatever it is that's required, right? So a lot of nifty functionality that's available within Query Builder.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's do something a little bit more tricky with some of those filter criteria, and let's start at that query NLQ word search windows. We've done some pretty simple things, and let's add a little bit more to it. Maybe this stuff that's owned by you.
Yeah, so another neat little functionality which NLQ provides is what is called as semantic shortcuts. So for example, you can map certain phrases of the utterance to a particular filter, so it knows how to process it. So for example, when you say, okay, show me all CIs which I'm responsible for, I can actually create a semantic shortcut for I'm responsible for, and create a filter on the table saying, okay, this maps to owned by me.
Right. Because that's not a specific relationship type or anything. Owned by, it's I'm responsible is not the relationship. So yeah, we have to make that, jump into what the structure should be. Yeah.
So I could go to this semantic shortcut, and I can say, okay, I want to create a new semantic shortcut. Now say, okay, this is on configuration item table. I'm looking. There is a JavaScript option for what me is, right?
It's dynamic. Ooh.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Configuration. Configuration items.
Okay. Kind of verifies what you're talking about. Oh, you don't happen to know anything. That's okay.
But you see, it is able to pick up the filter that we had set up.
Right,
It is
right.
able to map it to the filter we had set up.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Very cool. Very cool.
so for example, if you have another one, just say everybody based in Seattle, right? Show me all the servers owned by people based in Seattle. I can actually create a filter, semantic shortcut on that, saying that, okay, on the configuration items owned by field where the owner's location is Seattle is what this.
Yeah. So you can create those shortcuts for the phrases that are much more complicated and map them to the specific filter criteria that's needed to drive that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And so on that user experience, there's a couple other things that I thought were pretty interesting. People may not know much about it. I like that it remembers your past queries, right? Yeah. If you start, and then also, yeah, I noticed a few other things that you have. There's also some sample searches, like things that we kind of start the users off with.
That's right. So if you're new and you're just opening and you're like wondering, what is this? What am I supposed to enter here?
Yeah.
We kick you off or bootstrap this with some sample searches to give an idea of like what are the kind of queries you can do using this,
Got it.
this widget.
Got it. And I noticed on the far right of the little box there, you've got these search tips.
Yeah, so these are just like some tips which can help you in formulating your queries and understanding what is it that's showing up, whether it's like those type ahead suggestions or when like the table getter comes up, so on and so forth, right? So you saw that we can do simple single table queries with some filters set on the attributes for those tables, or it shows you what kind of multi-table search queries which you can do, which again depends on the relationship records we have between the CIs.
Right.
There are some advanced filtering capabilities. So you know how our platform supports all these different operators. So all these different operators can be used in your natural language query as well.
Got it.
Right. And again, we have relationship data, and that's what it uses. So you can have like your query contain the actual different relationship types, and that's the taxonomy it understands. Yeah, so here this is just some tips to get you started if you feel like, oh, I entered something, it didn't work. How can I tweak it to get it to work? Things like that.
Yeah. And one thing while you're looking at this for a minute, a lot of our customers do have service mapping and they do service maps, but they may not have the same structure or use the CMDB relationships. What is this query process for those relationships type? Does it process the service map types or does it process the CMDB relationships?
Yeah, so the queries that get created when you use this particular interface, they're all CMDB queries.
Yeah.
So all the queries by default are considered as CMDB query when you use this.
And what about non-CI data that you're dealing with? Can you pick up information such as the open incidents and things like that, just like the query builder?
So you cannot query just non-CMDB data because that is a requirement of the CMDB query builder, right? Because CMDB query builder creates queries in the context of CMDB.
Okay.
So if the query does not include any CMDB tables, then the query builder doesn't know how to process
Got it.
that.
So for example, I can ask a question such as, show me all service CIs with incidents, but I can't say, give me all incidents and their servers.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So non-CMDB tables can be included in the query if they act as like a filter on your CMDB table, as a filter criteria for the CMDB table, but not necessarily like when object that you're looking for is the non-CMDB data.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get it. I get it. So that's one of the maybe areas that, you know, someday we can merge what you can do in the platform, you know, for incident searches with the CI level details. So I know we've had some discussions about that and customers have asked about that in the past as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, good. The other thing, you know, I wanted to ask about is, you know, what are we thinking about next? I mean, I think what we got is pretty interesting. It's pretty cool. It takes some of the guesswork out of understanding the CMDB, you know, especially with semantics, right? You can load that up with all kinds of, you know, things that you're searching for. Now, I also understand that there's kind of a feedback mechanism. So people are capturing the kind of queries they're asking and they can let us know, the developer teams, right, what it is they're asking for that may not be giving them the results they expect.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So like when you create a query and you look at the data, right, and you realize that, okay, the way we interpreted it might not be correct, or this is not what you're looking for, you can submit feedback in the context of that query, saying, oh, whether it was useful or not. And if, let's say, there is an issue with the query, it also gives you the opportunity to tell, okay, what is it that didn't work? Did we misunderstand the table, a particular relationship, whether the filter was not set up correctly, so on and so forth, right? So this is a very good way to let us know, like, what's not working, so we can then make enhancements accordingly. So that's, and you can also send some like open-ended feedback. So
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. So we're always learning, from the customer's experience, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. So I want to address maybe the latest elephant in the room about querying. I mean, everybody out there is really excited about this whole chat GBT and these very open-ended queries that can turn into very rich results beyond just, a simple answer. I know that, the world is sort of on fire with interest on this. So is this an area that we're thinking about looking at? I know that, internally on ServiceNow, we've got a lot of product managers that are kind of investigating what can be done or what should be done here. So any thoughts on what customers might see in the future here?
That's absolutely on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
These days, right? And so I think but the way to think about it is like we are taking gradual steps towards
Yeah.
making the search more mature, more robust,
Yeah.
and more towards where people want it to be, like free from search, the way you'd search on Google, right?
Yeah.
But the way to think about the current functionality is that imagine how you would create a SQL query in your, right? If for folks who are familiar with how SQL queries work and how you would first create that query in natural language in your head, right? That's what this tool is, and it's trying to hide some of those schema complexities, but that's what it is, right? Natural language way of querying as you would using SQL. I think the next step which we are looking into is to possibly see how we can enable the global search and then integrate that, because we started off the conversation with it, right? Today CMDB search is not enabled from within the global search, but that's something like a lot of customers use. So we want to look at that and in the interim, and then we are definitely looking into the generative AI models and how we can have a model which is like specific to CMDB and everything CMDB, and how then we can leverage to do search in a more less stringent way.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more maybe, I guess, intelligent about the way we process those queries and process the results based on all that data, with an AI component, a true, what I would call that learning AI component in the back end. Yeah.
And taking other context into account. We have so many other applications built on CMDB, having that rich context on top of CMDB.
And that's a really good point. There's two things that I find is a lot of customers are still struggling to get their CMDB data in order to query it, right? If you don't have the data, you can't query it. So a big part I focus on is helping organizations ingest that information and from sources or discover it, and then get a good quality of that data, right? Put some governance and put some quality checks in there. But the other thing that's interesting around that is the correlation with where this information can be used in the future with a lot like if you look at, for example, Microsoft has Copilot. I don't know if you've seen that. And at the center of Copilot is something called Microsoft Graph. And in our CMDB, I'm thinking that's like a graph on steroids in our platform. Can you imagine if you're able to leverage the same kind of graph capability that Copilot does for all their CMDB CI data? We can do some pretty amazing things.
Absolutely. Like imagine if all the context, whether it's around asset management, or your SecOps, or your monitoring, your metrics intelligence, everything, like it's so much rich data and rich context that we have. So we absolutely want to like leverage it and put it all together. Right?
Yeah, it's really the heart of that data and with context, which I think gives our platform in general a huge leg up on anybody else out there in the industry. And this is something that I really look forward to what we could do next.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only way forward is only up from here, right?
Yes.
So that's exciting.
Yes.
Hopefully we can bring some good value to all our customers as we go on this journey.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much about giving you some overview of the features. I thought it was pretty easy, simple to get through. very usable. There's some caveats to this to consider when you're doing this, in terms of the structure, and be able to put those synonyms on and provide us feedback so we can kind of make it better and get that feedback loop in place. But yeah, excited what's next. But thank you very much for your time, Ritika. And I'm really looking forward to what's next.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.